हेलो व्यूअर्स, वेलकम टू भद्रा आईएएस एकेडमी। आज से हम लोग एक सीरीज शुरू करेंगे जो सीरीज आप लोग का अपकमिंग अरुणाचल प्रदेश सिविल सर्विस प्रीलिम्स एग्जामिनेशन के लिए बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होगा। तो दिस सीरीज इज बेसिकली ए पॉलिटी एमसीक्यू सीरीज। तो वी आर होपिंग दैट मेनी क्वेश्चंस विल बी कमिंग फ्रॉम दिस पॉलिटी एमसीक्यू सीरीज। इन दिस सीरीज we'll be discussing the questions along with answers and along with detailed explanation. Okay, so let's start the series. Okay, so coming to question number one. So if you see question number one, okay, first I will read the question. Okay, then I will explain the statements. Okay, when we will discuss which statement is correct and which statement is wrong and why it is incorrect. We'll also discuss that in this video. Okay, so first, if you see, the first question is consider the following statements regarding the scope and interpretation of Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. So basically this question is regarding, you can say, fundamental rights. Okay, fundamental rights. Okay, so when I say fundamental rights, the first thing what should come to my mind that it is in part 3 of the Indian Constitution. Okay, fundamental right, it is in part 3 of the Indian Constitution, and the question is regarding Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. And Article 21 basically it gives right to life and personal liberty to all the people who are living in India. Okay, next, if you see the statement number 1, it talks about Article 21 guarantees right to life and personal liberty, okay, only against the action of public officials and not private individuals. Okay, but if you see Article 21, it protects every individual against the action of public official as well as against the action of private individual, but in the statement it is written not private individual. So that is why statement 1 will be incorrect, wrong. Next, the right to privacy is implicitly included under the ambit of Article 21 as ruled by Supreme Court of India. Okay, so if you see statement number 2, here it is written that right to privacy is a part of Article 21, and that is correct. And here it is written that this is implicitly included. Implicitly included means it is not directly included in the Constitution, but by various judgments of Supreme Court, right to privacy has become the part of Article 21. And we know that in Puttaswamy case, okay, Puttaswamy case, Supreme Court gave a judgment that right to privacy is a part of Article 21, and that is why statement number 2 is correct. Next statement number 3, Article 21 applies to both citizens and non-citizens of India. Statement number 3 is also correct. The right to clean environment and protection against noise pollution are covered under Article 21. Okay, so if I say statement number 4, this statement number 4 is also correct. Okay, because Supreme Court of India has said right to life, it means right to dignified life. Okay, and how can my life become dignified, or how can I live with dignity? It also implies that if I have right to clean environment and protection against noise pollution, means ultimately my life will be dignified, and that is why Supreme Court also said the right to clean environment is a fundamental right under Article 21, and hence statement number 4 is also correct. So if you see in the question, it is said the which of the statement is or are correct. So 2, 3, 4. So the correct answer will be 2, 3, 4. Okay, so if I see the correct answer, it is ultimately 2, 3, 4, and the detailed explanation is also available here. Okay, you can download the PDF from our comment section. Okay, and you can also read the explanation. Already I have explained the points, but you can also read these points. You can download this PDF from the comment section. Okay, now coming to the second question. The second question, okay, the question is regarding the relationship between fundamental rights and DPSP, that is Directive Principles of State Policy. Statement number 1, fundamental rights are justiciable and enforceable by courts. Yes, fundamental rights are justiciable means if my fundamental rights get violated, then I can go to the court and get justice. Okay, means they are justiciable in the court of law, and court can order the state to enforce or implement the fundamental rights, and that is why fundamental rights are also enforceable by the courts. Whereas directive principles are non-justiciable and non-enforceable by the court. Yes, this statement is correct. Fundamental rights are justiciable and enforceable by the court, but DPSP are non-justiciable and non-enforceable by the court. Okay, the statement number 1 is correct. Next, statement number 2. Directive principles of state policy are instructions or guidelines to the state for framing laws and policies, whereas fundamental rights are obligation on the state. Okay, this statement is also correct, because DPSP means what? DPSP means these are some guidelines given by the constitution to the state. Okay, means the Constitution of India has given some directions to the legislative organs of the state as well as to the executive organs of the state how to make a law or how to implement a law, and that is exactly DPSP. And fundamental rights, these are rights. So rights are ultimately what? These are obligations on the state. Okay, state cannot violate my rights. Next, statement number 3. The Constitution of India gives precedence to DPSP over fundamental rights. Okay, nowhere in the Indian Constitution it is said that DPSP are more important than fundamental rights. Okay, and that is why statement number 3 is wrong. Next, the 42nd Amendment Act 1976 attempted to reduce the conflict between fundamental rights and DPSP by stating that laws made to implement the DPSP cannot be declared unconstitutional on the grounds that they contravene fundamental rights. Yes, statement number 4 is also correct, because if you see by 42nd Amendment Act, okay, and if I say 42nd Amendment Act, it is also known as mini constitution. And by 42nd Amendment Act, there was amendment done to Article 31C. And in Article 31C, it was written that if state makes a law to implement any or all DPSP, and by chance if this law violates 14, 19 and 31, then this law shall not be declared unconstitutional or void. Okay. However, later on, this provision was declared invalid or unconstitutional by Supreme Court in Minerva Mill case. But at least we can say that statement number 4 is correct, although later on it was declared unconstitutional. Okay, so if you see in this question which are correct, so ultimately 1, 2 and 4, the statement, so ultimately option B is correct, 1, 2 and 4 only. Okay, so if you see the answer, it is 1, 2 and 4 only. Okay, and the detailed explanation is given here. You can download the PDF and you can read from here. Okay, already I have discussed each point. Next, question number 3. How are fundamental rights different from ordinary legal rights? Okay, statement number 1. Fundamental rights are protected by the Constitution, while ordinary rights are protected by ordinary law. Yes, it is correct. Fundamental rights are guaranteed and protected by the Constitution. Yes, Constitution Part 3. Okay, next, fundamental rights can be altered by an executive order. Okay, but it is wrong. Fundamental rights cannot be altered by an executive order. If you want to alter fundamental rights, then you require constitutional amendment. Okay, so it cannot be altered by an executive order, and that is why statement number 2 is wrong. Okay, next, judiciary ensures protection of fundamental rights from government action. Yes, this is correct, because if I see if my fundamental rights are being violated, then I can go to the Supreme Court of India. I can also go to the High Court of any state, which ultimately my fundamental rights are being protected by whom? By judiciary. The statement number 3 is correct. Ordinary rights can be changed through ordinary lawmaking process. Yes. Okay, ordinary rights can be changed through ordinary lawmaking process. To change an ordinary right, we do not require any constitutional amendment, and that is why statement number 4 is correct. So which are correct? Ultimately 1, 3 and 4. Ultimately option A, 1, 3 and 4. Okay, so you can see 1, 3 and 4, and a detailed explanation is given here. You can download the PDF and read from here. Okay, already you have discussed each point. Next, coming to question number 4. Question number 4. This is regarding the scope and interpretation of Article 21. Article 21 guarantees the protection of life and personal liberty except according to the procedure established by law. Yes, this statement is correct. The right to privacy is explicitly mentioned under Article 21. No, right to privacy is not explicitly mentioned, it is implicitly mentioned under Article 21. That is why statement number 2 is wrong. Next, the Supreme Court of India has expanded the interpretation of Article 21 to include the right to live with human dignity. I have already said, Supreme Court of India has already said that the right to life does not mean mere living. Right to life means right to live with dignity, means right to dignified life is ultimately my fundamental right. This is said by Supreme Court. That is why statement number 3 is correct. Article 21 applies to both citizens and non-citizens of India. Yes, this is also correct. So which are correct? So ultimately 1, 3 and 4. 1, 3 and 4. Okay. 1, 3 and 4. Okay. Explanation is given here. Next comes to question number 5. Here you can see it is regarding the justiciability of fundamental rights in India. Fundamental rights are justiciable, allowing individuals to move to the court for their enforcement. Yes, this statement is correct, because if my fundamental rights are getting violated, then I can go to the Supreme Court, I can go to the judiciary for their enforcement. Okay. Next, right to property is still a fundamental right under the Constitution of India. No, this statement is wrong, because right to property today it is not a fundamental right. Okay, it earlier used to be a fundamental right, but today it is not a fundamental right. It is, however, a legal right. However, it is a legal right, or you can say it is a constitutional right. It is a constitutional right under Article 300A. Okay, but 300A it is not under fundamental rights. That is why statement number 2 is wrong. The directive principles of state policy are justiciable in the same manner as the fundamental right. No, already we have said that fundamental rights are justiciable in the court of law, but DPSP are non-justiciable in the court of law. Okay, so here it has been asked how many statements. How many statements are correct? Only one statement is correct. That is why option A, only one. Okay. So only one, and the detailed explanation is given here. Okay. Next, come to question number 6. Consider the following statements regarding the criticism of fundamental rights in the Indian Constitution. Okay. The language of these rights is complex and filled with undefined terms. Yes. So this is one of the criticism of fundamental rights, that the language of fundamental rights are very complex and many things are not defined clearly. Next, they can be amended or even abolished by the parliament. Yes. Okay. They can be amended or even abolished by the parliament. Just parliament cannot amend the basic structure. Okay. Okay. You can write that parliament cannot amend the basic structure. Apart from the basic structure, parliament can amend any fundamental right, or even parliament can abolish the fundamental right. As for example, we can say right to property. Right to property used to be a fundamental right, but today it has been abolished and it is not a fundamental right today. Okay. Next, their enforcement remains fully protected during a national emergency. No. During national emergency, the enforcement of fundamental rights can be suspended. Okay. So statement 1 and statement number 2 is correct. So which of the statements are correct? So it is ultimately 1 and 2 only. 1 and 2 only. Okay. So this is a detailed explanation. Okay, you can download and read from here. Let's come to question number 7. Question number 7, it talks about, okay. Question number 7, it is about fundamental rights. Okay. Fundamental rights means they are guaranteed by the Constitution of India and enforceable by the courts. Yes. The right to property is still a fundamental right. No. Fundamental rights can be suspended during proclamation of national emergency. Yes, the right to equality guarantees equality before law and equal protection of law within the territory of India. Okay, so this statement is also correct. Okay, so if you see which are correct, ultimately 1, 3, and 4. 1, 3, and 4. Okay, so 1, 3, and 4, and explanation is given here. Okay, next, coming to question number 8. It is about evolution of fundamental rights. Okay, this is about evolution of fundamental rights. The concept of fundamental rights was inspired by the Bill of Rights in the US Constitution. Yes, we have taken the concept of fundamental right from the Bill of Rights of the US Constitution. The statement is correct. The right to property was originally a fundamental right. Yes, correct. But was removed by 44th Amendment Act. Yes, this is also a correct statement. The right to education was added to the fundamental rights through 86th Amendment Act. Yes, this is also correct. Fundamental rights are absolute and cannot be limited or restricted in any circumstances. It is a wrong statement. Okay, fundamental rights are not absolute. Okay, remember, fundamental rights are not absolute and they can be restricted. State can put reasonable restriction on my fundamental rights. But remember one thing, we have said that fundamental rights are not absolute, but there is one fundamental right which is absolute, that is Article 17. Okay, Article 17, that is right against untouchability. Okay, right against untouchability. Right against untouchability. Okay, so right against untouchability is a fundamental right, and this fundamental right is absolute, and apart from Article 17, all our fundamental rights are not absolute. Okay, so which of the statements are correct? 1, 2, 3. Ultimately option A, 1, 2, and 3. So ultimately you can see 1, 2, and 3. Okay, next, coming to question number 9. Question number 9. Consider the following statement about regarding amendment of fundamental rights. Okay, regarding amendment. Fundamental rights are enshrined in Part 3 of the Indian Constitution and are considered to be amendable. Yes, important. Yes, it is correct. The 42nd Amendment Act, also known as mini constitution, made several changes but did not affect fundamental rights. Okay, if you see, the first part of the statement is correct. The 42nd Amendment Act 1976, also known as mini constitution, made several changes. Yes, the second part, but it did not affect the fundamental rights. Okay, this second part is ultimately wrong. Fundamental rights were affected by 42nd Amendment Act. Okay, and that is why statement number 2 is wrong. The basic structure doctrine established by the Supreme Court implies that fundamental rights cannot be amended. No, this statement is also wrong. Okay, the basic structure doctrine implies that the Parliament of India can amend any part of the Constitution of India, including fundamental rights. Just the Parliament cannot amend the basic structure. Apart from the basic structure, Parliament can amend any part, anything of the Indian Constitution. Okay, the statement number 3 is also wrong. The right to property was originally a fundamental right but was removed from the list of fundamental rights by 44th Amendment. Yes, this is a correct statement. So which of the statement are correct? So ultimately 1 and 4. 1 and 4 only. Okay, you can see, if you can see, it is 1 and 4 only. Okay, coming to question number 10. Okay, and this will be the last question for today. It is regarding the justiciable rights. Okay, it is about the justiciable rights in the context of Indian Constitution. Okay, if you say what is justiciable rights, justiciable rights means what? Means these rights has been given to us by the Constitution or by any law, and if these rights are being violated by anyone, we can go to the court, we can go to the judiciary and get justice. Okay, and those rights are known as justiciable rights. Okay, justiciable rights are those rights whose violation can be challenged in the court of law. Yes, statement 1 is correct. Right to education is an example of justiciable right under the Indian Constitution. Yes, because right to education comes under Article 21A. And Article 21A, it is under Part 3, that is under fundamental rights. And fundamental rights are justiciable right. The statement number 2 is also correct. DPSP, that is Directive Principle State Policy, are justiciable. No, they are not justiciable. Statement number 3 is ultimately not correct. This is wrong. Fundamental rights are guaranteed by the Constitution of India are justiciable. Yes, fundamental rights are justiciable. So which are correct? So 1, 2 and 4, ultimately option A is correct. Okay, so you can see the correct answer is 1. Okay, 1, 2 and 4, and the explanation is given here. Okay, so that's all for today. Thank you.